Welcome to the Athletic FC's end of season awards for the 2024-25 season. It is a time to celebrate the best of the best in the Premier League, the WSL and Europe. We will be naming our player, young player, manager and team of the seasons in our respective categories. And joining me to guide us all through it from the Athletic data and tactics editor, Duncan Alexander. How are you, Duncan?
I'm very good.
Yeah?
Thank you. How are
Ready?
you?
I'm good. Are you ready and raring to go?
Very much so.
Are you armed?
I'm semi-armed with numbers, but also memories, which I think are very important at this stage of the season.
They really are. Women's football writer Megan Ferringa is also here. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
Very good. Yeah, I'm ready to go. And our third panellist is football writer Jacob Whitehead. Ready for the awards? You haven't got the data, but you've got memories as well, haven't you?
Just vibes, really.
Vibes.
And a willingness to make an argument out of relatively tenuous sort of facts. So, yeah,
Good.
I'm up for the challenge.
Perfect. Before we get into the awards, I just wanted to check with each of you, because this can be, good, bad or ugly, but what's your favourite moment of the season?
Well, I'm a man who's all about niche things happening in football.
Yeah, you are, aren't you?
And I think in November, Justin Kluivert scored 3 penalties in a Premier League match. First time that's ever happened. And not only that, but Evan Nielsen won all 3. And that was the first time that had ever happened. So 2 unique events colliding into one even more unique event. That made me very happy.
Jacob?
I'm sorry to break your lovely format so quickly, but mine's going to happen in 6 days' time. We're recording just before Everton play their last game at Goodison Park, and as an Everton fan, I really can't see any way in which 2024-25 is going to be remembered for anything other than that. I mean, hell, we aren't even going to be relegated this year. So really, that's going to be the dominant thing. So come back to me.
Are you fearing the farewell, though?
Yeah, to an extent, I think.
Step into the unknown.
Very excited about Bramley Moore and the way they've done it, and what its sort of positioning on the docks means for the city as well. But of course, it's weird. You're both looking forward, I suppose, to sort of the notion of the event, the day, the emotion it's going to bring, the probably element of catharsis there'll be as well. But also, it's a goodbye to so many people at times. So,
do you know what my favourite memory of Goodison Park is?
Watford winning in 1984 there or something?
No, well, we didn't win against Everton in 1984, of course. We lost the FA Cup final to Everton in 1984. However, it was Watford winning at Goodison Park 5-2, and one of the locals walking past the press box and asking one of the journalists whether he knows how to spell the word shit.
Was that the Josh King game?
Yes, it was, which was absolutely fantastic. I know we've sworn, but it's fine. Hi, everyone. Megan, what was your favourite moment of the season?
So it's less of a moment, more of a movement. It's got shades of Everton as well. But when everyone was getting the memes of Sean Dyche and it was it's just woke nonsense, I really enjoyed that, because it got to a point where it was just a brick wall with some flowers laid against it. And everyone knew what it was. And it was just this universal acknowledgement. I loved that.
I walked past a green brick wall the other week and I actually just immediately thought of Sean Dyche. And I think what's interesting about that meme is it crossed to America, didn't it? Where people don't really know who Sean Dyche is, but that meme was so powerful that
he's transcended, which you wouldn't normally say that about Sean Dyche, but he has. So that's my little favorite movement sort of thing.
I like it. Random as well. Good. Right, let's get on to the awards. And just to let you know, the Player of the Year, the team and the managers were selected by the Athletic writers. This is more of a disclaimer, so you can sort of you can point your criticism towards different areas. The Young Player of the Year, can't complain about them because they were voted for by subscribers. And we have one other award coming up later on, which I'll tell you all about then. Before we actually reveal who the award winners are, what makes an award-winning season for you in general? Megan, let's start with you. I know, obviously, we want big achievers, but it could be something else, couldn't it?
Yeah, I think a player that kind of lights up the league, a player that kind of takes people by storm. It's usually, I like when there's someone that maybe doesn't come from a traditional top side, someone who makes you sort of look down the table. I think that's someone who deserves an award. But also people who have kind of a redemption arc that they're on. I love to give awards to those kinds of people because it's kind of human nature to root for an underdog or to root for someone who needs a second chance. So for me, that's an award-winning person or award-winning player.
You said redemption story, a team lower down in the league. I'm just thinking Ange Postecoglou. This just sounds like the perfect recipe for him to win Manager of the Year. That isn't going to happen. Spoiler alert, ladies and gentlemen. What makes an award-winning season for you, Jacob?
Yeah, I'm totally swung by narrative. I mean, I'm not somebody who can be... It is about how that player or that goal or whatever's made you feel in that season. I don't want sort of it to be 4 years, looking 4 years back and thinking, well, this player managed to produce X many goals in the aggregate. Like, it's not that's not what we're in the business for. Like, well, maybe Duncan is. But
yeah. I mean, I don't know how long your legs are, but you're literally treading on Duncan's toes here. This is his bread and butter.
Yeah, it's an outrage, to be honest. I mean, I think the one thing I always think is football seasons are really long. Like, it's, you know, we're obviously celebrating the 24-25 season here, but there's players that were probably really good and really good form in the autumn and less so now, vice versa. And I think, you know, people that can transcend a whole season, it's actually quite difficult to do. You know, if you think of like the Gareth Bale season or, you know, maybe an Eric Cantona season from the early 90s, but it's very hard to really sort of stamp your mark on a season. But I think we've got some names coming up that probably did do that.
Let's get into them then. And just a reminder to everyone, we are actually recording this prior to the climax of the season, prior to the English FA Cup finals, the European finals. It's a very busy time in the schedules for everyone. So if we miss something key, it's not that we've dropped a ball. It's just that the ball hasn't necessarily been kicked as yet. So remember that in the comments. Right, let's start our awards in the Premier League with our Player of the Year. I'm tempted to ask everyone to do a drum roll, but it's cool. We'll leave it. The award for our Premier League Player of the Year goes to Liverpool's title-winning top scorer, Mo Salah. Quite right. Do you not agree, Duncan?
I do agree. I mean, if on a number of metrics, you know, Megan mentioned memes earlier, and I think there's a sort of minor Opta-style meme, which is essentially only Mo Salah, as in only Mohamed Salah has more XYZ than players, because he's just constantly a point of reference. And I think this season he's set a new record for sort of goals and assists combined, 46 as most ever in a 38-game season, kind of beat the Thierry Henry and Erling Haaland high watermarks, which a lot of people thought couldn't be done. And he had that spell probably between sort of October and this early or late winter, when he was pretty much unstoppable. And I think he was the driving force at that point that Liverpool built the lead that has seen them win the Premier League quite comfortably. And I think, as we said earlier, I think he probably has ended the season slightly slower than he was for much of it, but that's why these awards are looking at the whole season. And I think we need to recognise that for a man of his experience and I guess even his age now, he's showing no signs of slowing down. He's been absolutely outstanding and, obviously signed a new contract, and I would imagine he'll be almost as productive next season as well.
Totally agree, and just on the no signs of slowing down, he does really seem to be one of those players. You know, when photographers do that thing where they blur the legs slightly to make it seem as they're going quicker. There's so many of Mo Salah. I don't know if he's just photographed more than anyone else, but I mean, I think that just shows, to an extent, just how much sort of, I guess, sort of joy, good vibes he brings people. You want to reproduce him in this way. One thing I was really going to add was, yes, he had this brilliant spell in late autumn, early winter, but for lots of the season, most of Liverpool's forward line has been actually pretty out of form. And he might be slightly slow now, but for loads of it, he has been, it's not like he's been pushed on to greater heights by having a brilliant partnership with another players. It isn't like Jacob Murphy and Alexander Isak pushing each other on to greater heights. He's been having to do actually quite a lot himself, sort of creatively, and has done it with aplomb.
And Megan, I suppose, Duncan mentioned there that he signed his new contract. A lot of this season was sort of built around the subplot of will he stay or will he go? So to have been doing it with all of that distraction as well was quite something.
Yeah, I think a lot of players you see, they get distracted by the noise outside, or then they think, okay, well, if this club isn't going to support me, maybe I'm just going to down my tools, whatever, throw your, what's the phrase that Brits use? Throw your toys out the pram.
Toys out the pram.
Yeah, that kind of thing. And he just didn't. Instead of, being professional is quite a cliche, but it's not that he just was professional. He continued to be better and better and better. And I don't think that's very easy. And one of the things that Jacob had mentioned was like vibes versus numbers. And granted, his numbers are insane. But then against Arsenal yesterday, because we're recording the day after the Arsenal game, I think it was Arsenal's first goal or second goal, he provided the pre-assist. He didn't get a number for that, but still, like, if he doesn't make that pass in behind Arsenal's back line, that goal doesn't happen. So I just think he just exists in this world between numbers, like quantifiable and unquantifiable brilliance. And I think that's really cool. So yeah, that's my take on him.
And to, at the moment, be closing in on achieving his best season for Liverpool in comparison with his previous best, which was in his first season, shows his longevity, and I guess also shows why Liverpool have wanted to extend his contract for 2 more years.
Yeah, I mean, it's unusual, I guess, for a player of his age to get such a big contract at this stage, albeit just for 2 more seasons. But he hasn't shown any signs of dropping off. He's showing signs that he's adaptable. And if Liverpool are able to strengthen, as to Jacob's point of the other players up front not playing that well for them this season, if they're able to strengthen there this summer, that should only really help him next season. So yeah, I mean, it's one of the most impressive individual seasons in Premier League history, and so he's a rightful winner.
He is indeed a worthy winner. But we must mention some of the other runners and riders, and just to let people know, there was a massive majority amongst the Athletic writers for Mo Salah, but Alexander Isak of Newcastle and also Chris Wood of Nottingham Forest came in second, quite a long way back. Jacob, in terms of Isak, would he have been your player of the year or not?
He wouldn't have been my player of the year. I think I'd have voted for him in the top 3, probably.
Yeah.
This has been his best season for Newcastle. It's been one where he's struggled for least with injuries as well. But I mean, he's just a player who I think would get into pretty much every team in the world, whether it's playing up front or off the left. And he's another one like Salah who just seems to play. It's weird because they both look like they're enjoying it. Whereas Salah sort of plays with this joy on his face. Sort of Isak sort of plays with this idea like he's just sort of toying with you a little bit. It's almost like a sort of sadistic cruelty with which he enjoys it, whereas Salah's just a straight up kind of boundless optimism. But both brilliant to watch.
And Chris Wood, I suppose, sort of fits in with your narrative of someone coming from nowhere, and it would have been great if Nottingham Forest had finished in the Champions League places, for example, and he'd been the top scorer in the league. But it has drifted a little bit for him.
Yeah, and I don't think it's totally his fault. I mean, we could go into the nitty-gritty of what's going on with Forest, but I loved his season. I think if you're a fan of just football and you're a fan of just watching someone come out of the blue and kind of take, just no one expected it. And what's more fun than sort of an unexpected star, but also he's older. He's not just like this young kid who's coming in. It's just something, I don't know. It's wonderful to see. And I think it's one of those stories that people can get excited about and watch, especially in the beginning when it just didn't really make any sense either. Like people kept writing like, is this real? Is this actually happening? And he kept doing it, which, I mean,
well, he started scoring goals a little bit like the original Ronaldo for a bit. And you could make that comparison and it did seem ridiculous, but he sort of was doing that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just the headers. He was doing like some really technical stuff. And I guess the cliche with him was always he was just lump it up, big man kind of stuff. But that wasn't the type of goals he was scoring regularly. So that was also really great to kind of see him constantly kind of defying everyone's expectations of him.
We will move away from our player of the year and we're going to head into our young player of the year. And as we mentioned before, it is voted for by subscribers. So thanks very much for getting involved in that. Our young player of the year in the Premier League is Aston Villa's Morgan Rogers. So congratulations to him.
Hi guys, hope you're well. Thank you for voting for me for Young Player of the Year in the Premier League. It's a big honour. And I just want to say thank you to everyone out there that showed you support this year and voted for me for this award. I'm so happy and honoured to win this award and hopefully more this next season. Thank you.
Tell us why he has finished above the rest, Duncan.
Well, it's obviously been a pretty good season for Villa. I mean, they obviously could have got to the cup final. They maybe could have knocked out Paris Saint-Germain in the Champions League. But overall, I think it's a very solid season for them. And he's probably been their most impressive player. I mean, he's gone from sort of someone brought in to someone that Unai Emery really relies on. And the way he moves with the ball, you kind of don't really see players carry the ball the way he does centrally much anymore. Kind of almost like a throwback to someone like Paul Gascoigne back in the day. I think only sort of 5 or 6 players have carried the ball further than him in the Premier League this season. And he scored, he's the first player in Champions League history to score twice in the first 5 minutes of a game. He's sort of become their sort of clutch player, really. And I think a player that other people on the Villa team really look at as someone who can sort of drive them forward and change matches, which, given his inexperience, he's from that same sort of youth team as Cole Palmer, obviously did very well last season. And yeah, I mean, I think he's only going to sort of flourish further and probably play many more times for England as well.
Playing beyond his years, isn't he?
Yeah, totally. And you can see that from the trust that Emery puts in him. Like, this isn't a manager who just sends a team out and asks them to, go and play and express himself. He's someone who has these really exacting instructions, and there's loads of competition in this area of the pitch for Aston Villa. And the fact is, I think he has the second most outfield minutes in the whole Villa team. I think only Tielemans ahead of him, and only narrowly. So the fact that here Rodgers at this age is trusted to basically be the implementator, is that a word? The implement
today
of his instructions.
I like that.
And the other thing is just kind of on the eye test, it's what he does in his first few seconds on the ball. Like, it feels like he takes it and it's an immediate positive touch forward. I liked what Duncan was saying about he moves slightly differently. He's just sort of always swaying when he has it, which I quite like. He's always balanced, but never perfectly balanced on 2 feet and steady. But it always works. He takes that touch forward and beats a player or brings someone else into play, opens up his body gorgeously to receive on his back foot loads as well. Lovely silhouette to him.
Can you come up with a better descriptor than Jacob has there?
No, but I do remember the viral videos of him versus Arsenal that everyone kept sharing, and I loved those. Like, I just kept sending them to all my, sorry to any Arsenal fans out there, but I just kept sending them to all my Arsenal friends. It was like, this kid is unreal. But it's like Jacob was saying, it's that immediate positivity, it's that desire to get forward, but also the confidence to get forward, and it's like the unquestioned confidence. It's just him. And so it's not something that he's learned or something that he's tried to adapt or whatever. It's just, you see him, he goes, why would I move backwards? I'm just going to keep moving forward. A bit like a shark, but it's just kind of instinctive. So I really enjoy it. Also, how strong he is. The way he can just muscle someone off. I know that I can't. I'm very weak. But so just like seeing him do that, I'm like, that's not easy. So yeah, I've really enjoyed watching him.
Let's just talk about a couple of other contenders. In second place was Arsenal's Miles Lewis-Skelly. I think he would have been a lot of people's pick, wouldn't he?
Well, I think this goes back to the point we made about football seasons being long. I think if we'd have done this at a halfway point, most people would have been like, sorry, who? Whereas I think we did it for the second half of the season. I think, his levels of improvement have been extraordinary. The way he played in both legs against Real Madrid, to go to the Bernabeu age 18 and just handle that environment. And look, not just handle it, but kind of look like he enjoyed it. He was sort of filming, speaking to his mum before the game, and it just looked like, casually trotting out the Bernabeu to play Real Madrid is the most natural thing. I'm not sure I could have done that when I was 18. We'll never know. But yeah, I think he's clearly a great talent. I mean, possibly in the future, he may, he's probably going to play midfield, I think. But I think he's brought that sort of, inverted fullbacks are very en vogue, and he's able to do that because he is essentially a midfielder. But he does it in a way that maybe someone like Zinchenko, when he plays at fullback, does look a little bit physically overawed, whereas Lewis-Skelly just, can handle plays. He's got a really, really good way of sort of receiving the ball and turning and holding off an opponent and, either getting away or winning a foul. So, it's been probably one of the, a real bright spot in a season for Arsenal that hasn't really gone the way they hoped.
Did you want to jump in there, Jacob? I saw you sort of leaning into the WhatsApp group.
I'm on number 3. Dean Huijsen is my guy.
Okay, he's your guy. Go on then, tell me about.
Well, I mean, not literally. I mean, it sounds like I'm up against every other sort of super club in the world to try and take him on. I love watching him. I love his bravery. I like the fact that he's still quite physically slight and still sort of manages to compete. I've got 2 friends who are sort of involved in talent development in the Netherlands, and obviously Huijsen has declared for Spain after moving there. I think when he was, and these friends are sick with envy. They just message me every time he does anything good, just saying, "Can't believe this." They're going to have Kabasi and Huijsen for lucky, and I think that just shows kind of when you have that sort of element, that amount of envy over a play, it's probably a sign they're doing pretty well, isn't it?
I'm going to stop you there. We might talk about him a little bit further on down the show, somewhere along the line. So, congratulations once again to Aston Villa's Morgan Rodgers, our Young Player of the Year. It is time now to move on to our Manager of the Year. And this was hotly contested, once again voted by the Athletic writers. And our Manager of the season is Nottingham Forest's Nuno Espirito Santo.
Hello everyone. I'm very grateful to the Athletic to give me this award of Manager of the Season. Of course, I want to share this award with everybody here at Nottingham Forest for their hard work, especially the players, the staff, and the amazing support of our fans, and what has been a remarkable season, a season that we will never forget. So thank you again, and I hope to see you soon. Cheers. Thank you.
Duncan, I'll come to you first. Why is he our Manager of the Season?
Well, the raw facts are Forest finished 17th last season. A lot of people had them as possible relegation candidates this season. And we don't know where they're going to finish, but they've still got a pretty good chance of getting into the Champions League. They're going to be in Europe. He's going to take them back into Europe. First manager to do that since Frank Clark back in the mid-90s. So in terms of like extraordinary improvement to a team, it's one of the best sort of upticks we've seen for a long time. And it's been built on an incredibly strong defence. You know, only Liverpool have kept more clean sheets. Only Arsenal have conceded more big chances. So he's got like a incredibly strong foundation. And then as we talked about Chris Wood, that players like him and Elanga and Gibbs White, they can do what they do further up the pitch. But it's been really impressive. And I don't really, if Forest don't make the Champions League, I don't think it undermines what he's done, and I don't think it undermines their season. I think to finish in the top 7 is still really impressive. And he's had a funny career, hasn't he? Because obviously he did have that few months at Spurs and it didn't really work out. But what he did at Wolves, really established them as a Premier League team, and now at Forest, has really marks him out as almost like the perfect upper mid-table Premier League manager. And I think he deserves the plaudits.
We're recording this the day after he was accosted on the pitch by his owner. He may well have been giving him a heads up that he was about to win the Athletics Manager of the Season. Who knows? But Megan, from your point of view, I can bring in, that Arne Slot finished second, Eddie Howe finished third. That said, do you think that Nuno Espirito Santo is in the right position as the winner of this award?
Oh, I feel like I'm going to get people in my DMs. I actually agree. I agree with Duncan. It's that relative comparison of 17th up to where they are now, and also doing it with the team that he has. I don't want to call it a motley crew because that is an insult. These are still Premier League players and they're still very, very good. But I probably wouldn't compare the Forest squad to, let's say, Liverpool's squad. They are two different squads, and to be within top 3 for quite a long time is something. And I think one of my favorite things about Nuno, and when you read about players who speak about him, is that ability of him to kind of instill in them this idea of it's us versus the world. And I think he had this sort of quote about making like habit a routine, and so constantly doing the same things on the pitch, making sure that it just becomes second nature. But then I think that it's not just about like, passes become second nature. It's that idea of like what your mentality is becomes second nature. And I think he does that really, really well. And I think a club like Forest responded well to that kind of management style, whereas maybe Spurs didn't. I just think this is kind of, a perfect collision, I guess, of a squad and a manager.
Bringing in the managers that he's beaten, does, the fact that he has converted Nottingham Forest from a side that finished 17th to one that is, chasing European football, is that a bigger achievement than, coming in after a legacy manager like Jurgen Klopp at Liverpool, or bouncing back like Eddie Howe has into the Champions League? Do you think that he's a worthy winner? I'm not trying to talk Nuno out of this award. I'm just playing devil's advocate for our
I think
viewers.
the statistic that possibly shows the job he's done the best is when we think about wage bill being such a predictor of how well a team does. I think, yes, of course, Forest have signed a lot of players, but I still think they're about 14th or 15th in that. And let's say that they finish 6th or 7th this season. That's an absolutely huge overperformance. You sometimes get underperformances if we're looking at Tottenham, perhaps, or Manchester United, but that level of overperformance. There's a nice throwback, I think, to Arne Slot and the idea of a manager just coming in, no signings, no excuses, and just going in and biff, winning the league in the first hit's quite good. I think that Eddie Howe is still chronically underrated in the sense that if Newcastle win their final 2 games, they'll finish second in the league, having made no major signings. And the other thing I wanted to mention was in the second half of the season, if this was just an award for sort of 2025, we'd have all sorts of managers come into it. We've had managers like David Moyes and Vitor Pereira who have come in halfway through, who've done an absolutely brilliant job since coming in at taking their teams away from the relegation zone. We've had Glasner at Crystal Palace over recent months. It really shows, I think, how these peaks and troughs of the season unfold. And to go back to Duncan's earlier point about how long it is, I think at various points, and especially maybe if you let the season go on another month or so, you could probably get about 6 or 7 names into there. It's generally been a really high quality season of coaching.
Yeah, I think if Palace do win the FA Cup, then Glasner probably would have a good shout here. I mean, it's mad, but Palace got off to their worst ever start to a Premier League season after sort of 10 games, and it's completely turned it around. So, yeah, I mean, I think, we're living through an era where I think the best managers in the world come to the Premier League. It's sort of been that way for a decade now, and that's where they can then show what they can do. And yeah, I think doing what these guys have done, but particularly Espirito Santo at Forest, is impressive.
And just a quick one, but a lot of times the conversation around management is about like sticking to your philosophy or not. And there's a certain manager right now that like hasn't, and maybe it hasn't really worked out for him and a lot this Premier League season. But Nuno has been pretty tactically flexible. Like I know he's still got a philosophy and a style that he's still trying to do. And maybe the last couple games it's been found out and they're struggling a little bit. But on the whole, he has been really flexible. Like I think he went to a back three for the first time in his Premier League career with Forest this season. He's told Sells, the goalkeeper, to like try to change up like his style of kicking from the back. And I don't know. I think that's really important too. If you're going to become like a manager who's going to compete in the top half while also having like a lower budget squad, you have to be able to adapt and be more flexible. And I think that's something he's probably learned over the last couple of management careers that he's had. So I've really liked that aspect of him too.
Let's move on now to our team of the year. And this was once again voted by our writers. I'm going to get Duncan to run us through maybe the goalkeeper and the back four. Do you fancy doing that for me?
Yeah, I can do that.
Can you do it in a sort of a football reporter voice?
I don't know, actually. I've never tried that, but I will. Okay. In our team of the season, in goal, Matt Sells, as mentioned by Megan a minute ago. From right back across to left back, let's go Trent Alexander-Arnold. Mm-hmm. Gabriel, the goal-scoring machine. Virgil van Dijk, title-winning captain, and the Bournemouth left back, Milos Kerkez.
Do we have any sort of disagreements over that goalkeeper and back four before we move on to the midfield? Is there any other contenders that you'd like to throw into the mix, Jacob?
I definitely agree with the goalkeeper and centre backs. I think on the full backs, I think there are quite a few different players who could potentially come into it. I'm not Kerkez I like, but I'm not certain.
Right, so this is basically Trent beef from Jacob. What's the problem?
I'm just not certain if this has been his best season in Liverpool colours. Of course, he's still a brilliant player and creative, and Liverpool are going to miss him. But
can you fight his corner?
I mean,
can you fight his corner, Megan? For Trent, do you think he's worthy going in there? I
think, to Jacob's point, I don't think it's his best season by a long shot, but the numbers are decent, and I don't think it's been a great year for fullbacks in the Premier League. You look at City have ended up with like midfielders playing at fullback. I think Jurriën Timber's probably got a good shout of being the right back of the season. But we're not going to be able to get Trent in there next year, are we? So we might as well get him in now.
He might plop into our European.
We just don't know.
We don't know.
Yeah, I was going to say, I kind of on the basis of the other fullbacks in the competition, while it hasn't been his best season, it probably hasn't been the best season for other fullbacks. Mm-hmm. So I'd still argue that he's probably had the best. And he's popped up with really important goals. Mm-hmm. As much as Liverpool fans want to boo him right now, there have been some like very important goals, like, and even the goal to clinch the title. That's Trent. So... Or Trent Alexander-Arnold. I don't like calling him Trent. I feel like that's really weird. I don't know. It's like I don't know him.
Over familiar.
Yeah. But anyways, like that's where I think he has had a really good season. I think that deserves to be acknowledged. And I know everyone's going to talk about his schoolboy defending and whatever, but I still think what he brings to the table offensively outweighs whatever negative defending people are going to moan about.
I think his defending's actually been better this season as well than it has been, because he hasn't been as attacking under Slot. I mean, we talked at the start about sort of memorable moments. Well, him putting his shirt on the corner flag at Leicester, tick, memorable moment. And then, do you remember that pass he played away at West Ham, where he sort of outside the foot and dissected, two players, and that's what he can do. I mean, in a sense, football's about memories and special moments, and he still comes up with quite a lot.
He's made for Real Madrid, isn't he? Really?
He might be. If that's where he ends up, yeah.
Absolutely. Well done. Right, let's rattle through the rest of our team. Jacob, would you like to take our midfield?
Sure, we have Liverpool's Alexis McAllister and Ryan Gravenberch, and then Arsenal's Declan Rice. How have these been played? Are we sort of having three... They're still three kind of fairly all-action players, aren't they?
Don't worry, it's just a formation. It's not necessarily going to work, okay?
Okay,
I think that would work.
It's just a lineup. But
I think they could do. They're all pretty flexible.
yeah,
Yeah. For me, the biggest omission is I'm surprised there's no Newcastle midfielder in there. I think as a unit, they're arguably even the strongest unit, I think, in the league as a trio. So for me, if I want the sort of team of the season to be a bit of a story of the season, I'd maybe replace Gravenberch with either Guimaraes or Sandro Tonali, who I think have been excellent.
do you agree?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think Tonali in particular, his sort of, the progression he's made this season has been really impressive. Obviously served that long ban, and people kind of knew he was a good player when he signed for Newcastle, but I think he's really kind of adapted to the Premier League in a way that is super impressive.
Any other sort of omissions that we've sort of...
Mine was Tonali. That was the one.
Tonali as well.
Yeah, I was going to say him.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's a good shout. So Tonali rather than Bruno. Okay. And our forward three is our three that were in contention for the player of the season. You can run us through those, Megan.
Liverpool's Mohamed Salah, Newcastle's Alexander Isak, and Forest's Chris... Wow, did not pronounce that right.
You can't get Chris Wood's name wrong.
I know, I got the other ones right. Nottingham Forest's Chris Wood.
Okay. Happy with that front three, everyone? Is there anyone that we think has been... Oh,
You say it's just a formation, but where are they playing?
well, yes, I know. I mean, you could maybe play Isak and Wood with Salah just in behind potentially, but obviously he needs to play out on the right. Don't worry about the formation. It's just to get the players into a lineup, okay?
I think we should have picked one of Isak and Wood, and then picked a specialist left
Okay,
winger. If I'm nitpicking,
so who? If you were to do that,
now you've put me on the spot.
yeah. Can you help, Jacob?
Yeah, let me just run through my mental catalog.
Probably, I don't know. There's again, it's not been a vintage season for left-sided forwards. I mean, if you look at Liverpool, for example, I mean, they've kind of shuffled between Luis Diaz and Cody Gakpo in that position. Arsenal have had similar issues. Martinelli's not been great. I mean, I think they don't necessarily play in that position, but I think Mbeumo and Wissa at Brentford, both, on 18 goals as we record, and for a team like Brentford, that's extraordinary. So slip them in somewhere.
Okay. Well, we have done our player of the season, young player of the season, our manager of the season, and our team of the year, despite the fact Jacob doesn't like the fact that we've had that formation. We have done it, and it is now complete. And we have completed our Premier League lineup. Our European awards will be coming up a little bit later on, but next we're going to be focusing on the WSL. So now it is time to focus on the Women's Super League. And as we did in the Premier League, we're going to get straight into it, and we are going to name our Player of the Year. And why don't I let you name our Player of the Year, Megan? You go right ahead. Go on.
So, Player of the Year is Arsenal's Alessia Russo.
Hi everyone, I just wanted to say a massive thanks for voting for me for the Athletics WSL Player of the Year. Really enjoyed this season. We've got one big game left and we'll be ready to go again next season. Thank you so much.
And I know it's been really contentious this year who's been winning Player of the Year, but Alessia Russo's had a phenomenal season, and it's worth remembering that she had an absolutely terrible start to this season, especially it was during sort of the fracas of the Jonas Eidevall end of his tenure at Arsenal. She could not find the back of the net no matter how hard she tried. And then suddenly she went on this run of form that was impeccable. And we started to see the Alessia Russo that you'd see kind of in snippets throughout the last couple of years, but this was just kind of next level for her. I think she's ultimately the reason why Arsenal sort of got back up to near Chelsea. They're in the Champions League, and they're in the Champions League final against Barcelona. I thought she's been absolutely wonderful this season. And she's shown a lot of creativity. She's been able to hold the ball up really, really well, bring in the other forwards around her. But ultimately, her goal scoring and her finishing this season has been next level. And I don't really think anyone in the Arsenal squad has been able to compare, except for Mariona Caldente. She's had a really great season, and I think she could have been player of the season. I don't think anyone would have been upset about that.
Jacob?
It really is a classic Ferringa redemption narrative there with Risso, isn't it? I see why you like that one. It's been pretty open, hasn't it, in the sense of, I was looking, are we allowed to mention rival awards, the FWA awards?
Oh, of course.
There's 39 different votes given to players for Player of the Season on that, which is like a huge number. That's like 4 teams worth. We drafted that a few weeks back. And I guess like Megan could probably be able to speak to just kind of how that, I guess, reflects on. It's been a really open battle, I guess, who's actually going to win it. Like, you could make an argument for so many players.
Well, yeah, because Khadija Shah is also, like, she's one of these players that should have been in, but then she got horribly injured in the last couple months, about 3 months ago. And so she just hasn't been able to score. She's actually still level with Alessia Russo for goals scored this season, and she's had less matches. So the two of them tied for the Golden Boot. But she just hasn't been around the last 3 months, and that's kind of where Man City have fallen off. And then so because Man City's form has fallen off, Khadija Shah hasn't been around, you can't necessarily give it to Shah, despite the fact at the start of the season I thought she was going to be the reason Man City were going to pip Chelsea to the league title. She was playing so well. So yeah, it's been really, really open this whole season. It's also kind of interesting that Chelsea, who've won the title in record form, aren't mentioned really here. And it's because they are like the very cliche epitome of greater than the sum of their parts, which is crazy to think about because they've spent $1 million on one player and all of their parts are unbelievable. And yet none of their forwards got more than 4 goals this season. So, you know, I think that's where Player of the Season sometimes is a little bit warped because really Chelsea were the best side here. Yet I think Alessia Russo stood out amongst all of it. So.
Yeah, we talked there about sort of that Russo and Shaw being level on goals. I mean, if you want to drill down to the XG, Russo overperformed by 2.3 and Shaw by 3.7. So Shaw's slightly more impressive, I think, there, which kind of speaks to their, I guess, goal scoring style a little bit. But very close, and as are our awards.
Congratulations to Alessia Russo of Arsenal into the Champions League final as well. Let's move on to our Young Player of the Year. And you can do the honours as well, Megan. Why not?
The Young Player of the Year is Liverpool's Olivia Smith. And I absolutely adore watching Olivia Smith play.
Hey, I'd just like to thank everyone at The Athletic who voted for me for Young Player of the Season. It means the world to me, and it was a great season, and I can't wait for what's next.
There's a reason why now so many of the teams in the WSL, but also in Europe, are looking at taking her away from Liverpool. So she arrived in Liverpool last summer for a then club record fee from Sporting. Not many people sort of expected her to do too much, but she's got this history of coming into a league, just lighting it up, taking away records. I mean, I think she's won Player of the Season in almost every single league that she's jumped into. So again, like to go and win Young Player of the Season is kind of on par for her. But the way she plays, she puts her head down, she attacks, she terrorizes defenses. She's just got this, she like oozes confidence, but then her touch in front of goal is perfection and sublime. I think all she needs is a tiny, tiny bit of molding, honing, and then the next few years, she's going to be a really, really special player. And Liverpool, too, they didn't have a great season. They sacked manager Matt Beard because they just weren't performing well. There's zero creativity in that team. And Olivia Smith scored 7 goals in 20 matches, which doesn't sound like too much, but equally, she was producing and creating most of those chances herself. She'd just take on a defender. I'm thinking of the game against Manchester United, which was at Anfield, which it should be noted, before Olivia Smith arrived, Liverpool had never managed to score a goal at Anfield. They'd always lost against Everton, I think like 4 times in a row. Olivia Smith shows up. She scores the first goal against Manchester City. They were actually level 1-1, and then Olivia was forced off at halftime after an injury, and then they ended up losing 2-1. But then against Manchester United at Anfield, I mean, Man United were all over Liverpool. And then Olivia just basically looked up, checked her fullback, and said, I'm going to take you on. Took her on and produced this amazing goal. And Liverpool went on to win the game. It was their first ever win at Anfield. So it's a player who will genuinely take the game by the scruff of its neck. And I think there's a reason why so many people really like watching her.
And do you think that this was as tightly contested, this category, as the main award, the senior award? Do you think there were others in the mix that could have had a case?
Yeah, there's in January, West Ham signed a forward named Martinez from Germany, and she's had an unbelievable season. I think she scored like 10 goals in a silly number of games. She got within like the Golden Boot conversation just in like half a season. So I think she she really deserves to be in this conversation. The voters sort of chose Grace Clinton, came in second, and Chelsea's Aggie Beaver-Jones came in third. I think both of those players did really well, but I think Olivia Smith, absolutely, she takes the what's the phrase? Takes the biscuit or something.
Takes the biscuit, yeah. It just takes the award.
Takes the award, yeah.
I suppose Clinton's had such a good introduction to international football as well that might have sort of impacted some voters' thinking as well. Even though I know we're voting on domestic form, she's immediately looked so at home in England's system and feels like such a modern player. I can imagine that helping her case.
Yeah, and last season she had a real breakthrough with Spurs while she was on loan from Manchester United, so I think that too, people expected her to play really well. Same with Aggie Beaver-Jones. She's been around for the last 2 years. So Olivia showing up the way that she has just in the past 12 months, I think that's why she deserves it.
Okay, let's move on to our WSL Manager of the Season award. Megan, go on, fire away.
It's Chelsea, Sonia Bambaster. Chelsea have won their 6th WSL title this season. Just over the past weekend they did it. It's phenomenal. And I know a lot of people are going to probably compare this to Arne Slot because he didn't win this award. And that's fair. But equally, Sonia Bambaster's come in and she's made Chelsea even more terrifying than they were before. Granted, she didn't win the Champions League. They ended up getting knocked out by Barcelona, as Chelsea have historically seemed to always do. And that was ultimately like why she was brought in. But equally, to not just win the WSL title once again, but to do so with a record 60 points, invincible season. I mean, not many managers, if any managers, could say they can just do that on a whim. And yeah, I think Sonia's done really, really well. And she's done it without some pretty big names. You know, Lauren James has been out regularly throughout the season. Sam Kerr hasn't really been in. Guru Wrighton's been out as well. They lost Kadisha Buchanan, their central defender, pretty early in the season. So she has had to navigate quite a few bumps, and she's still managed to do an invincible season, winning against all of the top sides as well in WSL. I think the only person who really took points off her was Amandine Mikel from Leicester, who's actually a former French manager with her. So yeah, she definitely deserves this award.
Stepping into those big shoes is quite something, isn't it, Duncan? To have done that and to have exceeded, you know, I know it was a very tight season last season, but to finish with a massive points gap of 12 at the top of the table and to look, as Megan quite rightly said, even more terrifying as Chelsea were, previously.
I mean, yeah, to stress once again, football seasons are very long and invincible seasons are incredibly rare for a reason. Perugia once did it and didn't win the league, which is not ideal. But yeah, I mean, generally, if you can do that, it goes down in history, and this season definitely will.
Okay, let's get into our team of the season. And there are 3 Chelsea representatives in the team of the season, 4 from Arsenal, 2 Man City, 1 from Manchester United and 1 from Liverpool. Do you want to run us through it and tell us why they're in there along the way?
So the goalkeeper is Manchester United's Fallon Toulouse-Joyce. She replaced Mary Earps at the start of the season, and not many people expected her to do as well as she has. The 28-year-old is now a US Women's National Team international because of what she's done with Manchester United. She tied with Chelsea's Hannah Hampton for the Golden Glove this season, but it's the way she's gone about doing it. I think I'm going to use some nerdy data stuff, but she had like a post-shot expected goal, there we go, of 22.8 in the WSL, which meant she was saving ridiculous shots, whereas Hannah Hampton's was only 15.2. So while they did save the same number, or they had the same number of clean sheets, Toulouse-Joyce arguably had like much harder shots to defend, and I think she's the reason why Manchester United are in the Champions League next year.
Into our defence.
We've got Arsenal's Emily Fox at right back. A lot of people are going to try to say that Lucy Bronze probably should have been here. I think Emily Fox deserves this. She was really great, came in this season for Arsenal, and just like we said, that whole idea of just being consistent throughout the season is really important. So Emily Fox deserves it. Chelsea's Millie Bright and Manchester City's Laia Alexandri make up the centre back pairing. Both of them, I think, have been just, again, consistent throughout the season. Millie Bright in particular, I think there's about 3/4 of the season she was coming back from injury, but also produced one of her most imperious seasons that she has in a long time. And a lot of people are talking about her getting back to her top form, which is really exciting. And then Katie McCabe, Arsenal, makes up the final of the back four. And Katie McCabe, interestingly, she's the second for expected assisted goals. Or no, she's the top. she topped the charts for expected assisted goals this season from fullback. And most people think of her as just this like absolutely horrible person to come up against and just like will rip your face off kind of thing. But she's actually a really creative player and deserves a lot of credit for that. And then when we go to midfield, we've got Arsenal's Mariona Caldente, Chelsea's Erin Cuthbert, and Chelsea's weak captain. Again, Caldente's there because we've already spoken about her. She had a great season, deserves to be in it. Cuthbert very rarely gets the recognition that she deserves, but like her vision, her awareness, her ability to be in the right spaces at the right time. A lot of players, when they talk about who they want in their own team, all of them will mention Erin Cuthbert in their midfield. So there's a reason why that. And then captain had a really great season this time around under Bombastor. She was kind of a new player. Not many people knew what to expect, but she was one of those young players who came in and really just stepped into the role and did it seamlessly. And then forward line, you've got Liverpool Olivia Smiths, Manchester City's Khadija Shah, and Arsenal's Alessia Russo. We've kind of already talked about them, so I feel like I can leave that.
Yeah. Well done. You've run us through the entire team and told us exactly why they're there. Is there anyone that you think has been missed? Anyone that has a decent shout?
Yeah, I personally think Sarah Holmgaard from Everton deserves to be somewhere in that back line. She's had a really great season, and Everton have not had a really easy season by any stretch of the imagination, but she's been one of their better creative forces. She's also been great at defending, so I think she's a little bit unlucky not to be mentioned here.
Fullback's such a difficult position to do that from as well when you're in a struggling team, and for her to produce so well. And Megan, we mentioned she's done a brilliant piece with Sarah and also her twin Karen as well, just exploring basically how their synergy have been. They've been assisting each other a ridiculous amount. But yeah, it's been Sarah Holmgaard who's really stood out. But I'd also like to see her in the back line.
Okay, so that completes our rundown of WSL awards. And next, it is our men's European stars. Okay, let's start this European men's section with our player of the year. Reminder, this was voted for by the Athletic FC writers. Our European player of the year is Barcelona's Rafinha. Why is he the player of the year, Duncan?
Well, he's very good at football.
Yeah, that'll do. Thank you very much. Let's move on. No, carry on.
But I think people always knew Rafinha was good at football, but maybe not to this extent. I mean, as it stands, he's scored or assisted 56 goals in all competitions this season, which, yes, he plays for one of the most ridiculously attacking teams I've ever seen, I think. But at the same time, he's, amongst many other good players, he's really turning up every week. And he's almost, in a very young team, he's taken on a bit of a leadership role as well. And I don't think people saw this coming. I think he always felt a bit like a signing at Barcelona where he was kind of brought in a transfer window where they couldn't really attract the biggest names. But he's really kind of, we'll see if it's sort of sustainable, but it's one of the great seasons. I guess it's a shame he couldn't quite fire them to the Champions League final, but he did almost do that with that late goal at Inter. Just
to let you know, the second place in that was our player of the year in the Premier League, Mo Salah, and then Ousmane Dembele and Lamine Yamal finished joint third. So disappointment for Lamine Yamal finishing third in the player of the year. Let's name our young player of the year, though, ladies and gentlemen. Everything's come up roses for Barcelona's Lamine Yamal, 17 years young. He turns 18 in July, and no surprise here that he is the young player of the year, Duncan.
None at all. I think a lot of people might have had him as player of the year. He's ridiculously consistent. He's ridiculously talented. That first leg against Inter was one of those performances where I think people that don't even like football could have sat down and watched that game and gone, oh, this guy. His kind of ability to dribble past players is probably the best we've seen since Messi. And I don't think Messi was as good as Yamal is at this age. So, I think we don't know how long. We can't see his legacy. We can't see his longevity at the moment. But if he stays fit, which is a big question if you played this amount of games when you are 17, but that's another question. Then he is on track to be one of the greatest players of all time. And there's kind of no higher praise than that, really. He's the sort of player that you watch and you're like, they can do anything, and it's genuinely thrilling to watch him. So yeah.
Also in like the era of social media where you're constantly scrolling and you want that like immediate dopamine hit.
Yeah.
Watching him for 90 minutes, you get that, which you don't normally get. Like that's kind of football's big existential crisis right now, where like FIFA's trying to figure out is, okay, how do we keep like getting the young people involved? Like just watch Lamine Yamal for 90 minutes and like you constantly feel like you were just getting a highlights reel, which is just, I think that's also really special because you don't usually tend to get that. But I remember like the Inter game, I just sat there with my mouth open the whole time, just shocked by what this kid was doing. And I know we worship him a lot and the rest of his team is also really important. But for someone to constantly feel like he has to be worshipped in the way that he is, that is telling of what his talent is.
And he got criticised almost for his determination to keep delivering in that Inter semi-final, going for a shot when he should have probably taken it into a corner. But that's what you love about him, isn't it?
Well, he's 17. He can do anything. Why not? Like, to build on what Megan was saying, it's yes, he's this highlight player. And we think back to someone who emerged at 17, 18 with similar sort of skill set, someone like Neymar. Yamal, I think, is far better in the sense that all of his skills are so functional. You see the end point of it. There's nothing being done for the sake of the skill itself. It is all with the aim of scoring, of having an assist. You say that's example, I think generally he's pretty unselfish, the amount of times that he clips it to the back post. What's really kind of in a way shocking about this award is today quite how young he is. I mean, like he could qualify for this for the next 3 or 4 years. He's not up against weak opposition at all. I mean, Desiree Doué could win this quite easily. João Neves at PSG. There's so many, and the fact that it's just so cut and dried. I think if anyone voted for anyone other than Lamine Yamal, I'd sort of look at them and boggle a little bit. So, yeah.
Right, let's move on to our manager of the season. And it is Paris Saint-Germain's manager, Luis Enrique. Domestic success in France, but into the final of the Champions League. And quite rightly there, Megan.
Yeah, I think 100%, especially because this PSG team historically, even someone who maybe is coming into football late or might not know too much about it, everyone would associate PSG with just these like high profile star players, people that aren't necessarily clicking or whatever. But he's come in and changed that, and he's turned them into, again, to use the phrase, but like a greater sum of their parts. I think as well, like listening to different podcasts and reading different things about him, it's that ability that he came in and he said, okay, these are the things you have to do. And I heard that he makes them sign in before practice, things that you would do with school children when they're 12 because you need to put in a little bit of discipline. And he's done that at PSG, and it seems like everyone's really bought in. I think it takes a lot for a manager to come in and do that at a club like PSG. And I know that that's PSG. They're trying to change the whole model and their whole philosophy and their ethos, but to find a manager that is willing to do that, but not only willing to do that, but has done it and like executed it in the way that he has, I think it's phenomenal. Also, I really loved that Arteta said what he said after the Arsenal PSG game. It was like, oh yeah, they all said that we should have won, and then he just kind of gave that wry little laugh that he did, and he was like, oh, Arteta's a great friend of mine, but no. And I just loved it. I think he's a wonderful person to watch and to see do as well as he has at PSG.
And it's right that he's finishing above Hansi Flick in second and Simone Inzaghi of Inter in third.
I'd have gone for Inzaghi, personally.
Oh, really?
I think that...
This is the recency bias kicking.
No, but I really rate Luis Enrique, and I mean, I remember being in the stands when Newcastle ripped him apart and thinking, this guy's not going to turn this around, and how quickly they've done that. But Inzaghi doesn't have some of the luxuries which Enrique has. He's in a really tight and well-thought Serie A. He can't rest players. He can't optimise his players in a way for the Champions League. He came into that semi-final against Barcelona having lost 3 games in a row, and they still turned out and put in that performance. He can't spend money at the same rate that some of the other European super clubs can. Like, some of their key players are free transfers who people thought their careers were basically done. I mean, like Henrik Mkhitaryan, what he's done with him, Hakan Çalhanoğlu. Not many people wanted Marcus Thuram, and look what he's done with all of them. And he plays with this great distinct style. Like, it's really imaginative. What he gets his centre-backs to do, like a Serbia at 37 bursting forward into the box and still managing to get back to cover, and not even for the goal, just in terms of their actual normal patterns of play. I think he's been so impressive, and if Inter Milan can cap it off with a Serie A title, I think for me,
Jacob sort of convinced me, actually. I actually think we should use...
Do we need to re-record?
Yeah, scrap everything. No, I think we should actually use the Champions League final as the... Ring up UEFA. It's not the Champions League final. It's the Athletics Manager, the European Manager of the Year playoff. That's what it now is. Yeah.
Okay. But I suppose it's a decent shout, isn't it? Really. It's not going to happen. Congratulations to Luis Enrique, Paris Saint-Germain, our manager of the season. Right, let's go through our team of the season. We have 5 representatives from Liga, all from Paris Saint-Germain, 3 from the Premier League, 2 from La Liga, and 1 from Serie A. It is another 4-3-3 just for you, Jacob. In goal, Thibaut Courtois. Any complaints on Courtois being in goal?
Not a complaint, just a mention for Miles Villa at Roma, who has been outstanding.
Okay. Back 4, Achraf Hakimi of Paris Saint-Germain, Alessandro Bastoni of Inter, Virgil van Dijk of Liverpool, and Nuno Mendes of Paris Saint-Germain. Are we happy with that? Anyone?
I'm pleased that Bastoni has got his flowers here because
Yes.
he's a player who sometimes is ignored. No, not ignored, that's not fair, but he's a player who often isn't talked about at the very top level of European centre-backs when I think he should be. Over the last 3 years, he's been so consistent, and see him kind of really flourish into this leadership role, even amid such a sort of, I guess, experienced centre-backs where he's the leader. He'll be doing it with Italy, I think, for the next decade. It's good to see him in this company, I'd say, for the first time at the end of the season.
In the midfield, Pedri of Barcelona, Vitinha of Paris Saint-Germain, and Declan Rice of Arsenal. Any controversy there?
I don't think so. I think Pedri's phenomenally underrated, even though he's well regarded because he's so calm, so metronomic and brilliant. Obviously, Declan Rice has been outstanding. His display of both Real Madrid games was extraordinary. I mean, those 2 free kicks will live long in the memory. Vitinha is obviously the really interesting one, given that he was in England at Wolves. Scored a good goal against Chorley in the FA Cup. Not sure that would have got him into this team, but really has just been an extraordinary presence in the middle of that PSG midfield. So,
and there's that story too of, was it Messi who looked at him and was like, "Oh, sorry, you're not very good," when he was at some PSG practice, and now here he is in the team of the season. Obviously, that's his biggest accolade. But also, what he's managed to do, which I just find that hysterical. The idea of Messi turning to you and saying you're not very good. I would have withered on the spot and would never have continued playing. Yeah,
that could quite easily kill a career.
Yeah,
I'd have got out the FA Cup goals of the month, but each to their own. So.
And our front 3, Mo Salah of Liverpool, Ousmane Dembele of Paris Saint-Germain, and Rafinha of Barcelona, who was our European Player of the Year. Is there any other shouts, or are we okay with that front 3?
You could always have Lamine Yamal in there, but it's deciding who goes, isn't it?
Absolutely. Would you have Lamine Yamal in that European Team of the Year? If you consider the impact that he's had, and obviously, still doing it as a 17-year-old, but also you would want to watch him. If you had an opportunity to build a team, you'd have him in that team, wouldn't you?
You would. I mean, it's him or Salah, I guess, in that position. And you could argue that if this is a European team, that Yamal got Barcelona much further into the Champions League than Salah did with Liverpool. I mean, Salah was a bit disappointing in the PSG game. So, yeah.
Okay, so who are you picking?
I'd probably go Yamal, yeah.
Jacob?
I'm going to stick... Well, actually, I'm going to play Rafinha up front.
Yes.
And then bring in Yamal and have them all rotate.
You're going to bring in Yamal?
I'd bring in.
Instead of Mo Salah?
Yeah, but I keep Dembele. I think Dembele's had a great season. And considering, I think it was 7 months ago, he was left out of the squad against Arsenal, and then he's the one that scored against them this time around. So I'd keep him, keep Rafinha. Sorry, Salah. I know Liverpool fans are going to hate us for that, but...
That's all right. No worries. Everyone loves Lamine Yamal. Well, that is all we've got time for. Just a word on the signings. Obviously, there'll be continued coverage throughout the summer on the transfer window with our team of dedicated writers on transfers. But on the awards, thank you very much to Megan, to Jacob, and to Duncan for guiding us through all of those awards. And you can read much more about all of our 2024-25 season awards winners right now with dedicated articles on the chosen men and women who have finished on top. Just check out The Athletic on the website and the app. Thank you very much for listening and watching on YouTube, and we'll catch you again soon.
If you want to watch more episodes of the show, please subscribe to the channel. We'll be joined by the likes of David Ornstein, Matt Slater, Adam Crafton, Carl Anker, and plenty more through the season. If you'd like to listen to the episodes in full in audio form, search The Athletic FC wherever you get your podcasts from.